African immigrants settle in Canada. It is what it sounds like. They help newcomers from Africa settle anywhere in Canada and adapt to life here without hassles, providing individual and family support, driver's road test assistance, student support, computer skills training, and job search assistance. Free consultations are available all year round. Contact African Immigration Settlement in Canada. Visit aisic.ca. That's aisic.ca.
Perfect. All right, thank you. So African Immigration Settlements in Canada, also known as AISIC, was established in 2009. So the goal of the organization is to facilitate the successful settlement of new African immigrants to Canada. So the organization was founded with a deep-seated interest in seeing individuals thrive and succeed in Canada, and coupled with a response in the increase of African immigrants choosing Canada as their new home. So the organization provides a range of family and individual support services, addressing crucial aspects of the settlement process. So these services encompass accommodation assistance, financial guidance, and community integration. Additionally, the organization offers orientation, student accommodation, admission support, employment opportunities, and specialized assistance with obtaining a Canadian driver's license, ensuring a comprehensive and seamless transition to immigrants of African heritage. So our services in the organization extend across Canada, helping African immigrants to settle without hassle nationwide. We recognize the diversity within our community, and we hope to tailor our services to meet the unique needs of individuals and families. So today we'll be having a short workshop, and I'll let Ms. Tokbe introduce our speaker.
Thank you very much. So our speaker today is Mr. Samuel Aribi. He's a dedicated and skilled animal science professional, and he has over 10 years of experience in animal nutrition and nutrition research. He holds Masters of Science degree from the University of Manitoba, and he currently works with the University of Manitoba, where he excels in livestock management and nutrition support. He's known for his compassionate approach and innovative thinking, and he has contributed to several successful standard operating procedures around animal health, welfare, and nutrition. Outside of work, he enjoys spending time with family, volunteering at his local church, and he is the Manitoba Provincial Coordinator of International Youths at Canadian Agriculture, IYCA. He is dedicated to advancing animal health and nutrition through ongoing education and hands-on experience. So let's make welcome Mr. Samuel Aribi. Let's use our digital hands to welcome our guest speaker this evening. A round of applause, please. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Adilakun. Thanks for that introduction. And welcome everybody to tonight's presentation. I hope you'll be able to learn something and at least educate people out there on, sorry, I'm just trying to share my screen. Yes. So I'm hoping that from this presentation, you'll be able to at least get somebody out there that needs this information. And so welcome everyone once again. As she rightly said, animal scientist. Majority of my experience have been based in animal science, but at least I can speak to agricultural sciences in general. So this evening, the topic of my presentation is navigating agriculture in Canada for African immigrants. And so for my presentation today, I have the following outlines: an introduction, why agriculture in Canada, agricultural sectors in Canada, steps to enter the agricultural sector, work opportunities in agriculture. I'm going to highlight some government programs that are available for supporting new immigrants. I'm also going to at least touch on some things that we can do to overcome some challenges that may come our way. And then I will open it up for questions and then conclude. I hope everybody can hear me very well, perfectly.
Yes.
Awesome, thank you so much. And so what is agriculture? Is a practice of growing crops and rearing animals for food. So the main objective for my presentation today is to provide practical insight on how to navigate success in Canadian agriculture. And so we get this a lot, even the young generation. So many people, they just know that food is on the table, right? But they don't know what it entails, how everything is put together. And so the presentation tonight is going to give us an idea of that. So as we can tell from that definition, agriculture is a broad concept. It involves growing crops, involves rearing animals, it involves food processing, and so many other things that come in between. So I'm just emphasizing that definition right there is just a general definition. And once we start to look into it and to tear the pieces apart, we're going to see that agriculture is really very big. And so it involves taking food from the scratch. That's called the food science, everything that supports plant growth, that's soil science, and some engineering even comes in between. So this definition is just a broad concept, and we get to some afterwards. And so why agriculture in Canada? Why agriculture in Canada? We can see that agriculture, it contributes some parts to the economy here in Canada, and it's about $60 billion in terms of GDP. And so that's significant. Although national, generally in Canada, it appears that it contributes about 2%, but when we start narrowing it down to where agriculture is really focused, we can see that it's really a big deal. And so we can see that Canada is one of the world's largest producers. I want to say majority of produce that we produce here in Canada, we don't consume it ourselves. So landscape in cultural Canada is more export focused. We have enough to eat and we have surpluses, and so we just ship them out. So Canada is the largest producer of oilseed, oil grains, and livestock. While I was doing my master's, I had the opportunity to work with one of the agri-tech, which is canola. And so one of the things we were was to your press cage. So after the oil has been extracted from that seed, call it co-product, not byproduct. Some people we know that. So whatever remains, we're trying to see how to do that and then feed that to animals, and it really went well. I was looking at some digestibility and of broiler chickens to be specific. And so crop alone is Canadian heritage. It's exported to all over in the world. I was done a presentation earlier today, and one of the presenter had gone to other countries where got their heritage from Canada. So agriculture is pretty significant. It contributes to the economic growth, and also there are rising demands. You have skilled workers in agriculture, and that is why very important. That is why it's big in Canada. And so Canada's offers diverse and numerous pathways for newcomers. Like I said, it's big. It goes beyond just planting seeds or raising animals. There are so many things in between, and hopefully we can see some of as we go on. And so I just wanted to also speak to that increase in demand for skilled labor. I think it was last year or so. And so we're trying to hire somebody for dairy units. They are at the University of Manitoba, and it was really difficult to get somebody. To the extent that my operations manager started to sort of like maybe consider immigration pathways to bring somebody in. So that really tells you how important the landscape is. Also, beyond that, we are seeing more and more reduced interest in agriculture from young people, and so that pressure for labor and to fill those spaces, it's there. The opportunities abound, and so if you meet any young person who is sort of like considering it, so just please encourage them. The opportunities abound. It's limitless. And it's so shocking to know. I was listening to that presentation, and about 80% of the people live in urban areas, and only just shy of, just few people actually live in the in the rural areas, main agricultural landscape is. So that pressure is on old people. Young people are very innovative. So those old guys are looking for those innovations from young fellas to see how to improve the industry. So the opportunities are bound. While it is very difficult to get, the young people here in Canada, that opportunities open up for immigrants who are just coming into the country. And I must say, even those big companies out there, they have programs to even employ people from their home country to come and work. So so it contributes significantly to the economy. It also provides great opportunities for immigrating. And so I just wanted to show this chart just to bring it to perspective that the major agricultural production is in the Western Canada. And so we can see that after oil and gas, that is, so the graph to my right is the production and the graph to my left is the export. So after oil and, which is like the energy sources, agriculture is the next. So like I said, we produce more than enough that we need. And so the market is really focused on, exports to other countries who need it. So that brings us to what are the key agricultural sectors in Canada? First of all, we have grains and oilseed, like I mentioned. It's a big one. You probably see more farms are involved in this compared to animal, rearing. It's a big one. Grain and oilseed. Yeah, in the Western Canada, we have wheat, we have canola, we have corn, we have soybean meal, which are the major crops. And you can see the provinces that are more focused on growing those, which are Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. Another industry is the livestock industry and poultry industry, and that's where I belong. So we see beef production, dairy, pork, farming, and same thing, majority of the prairie regions, that's Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, and some part of Ontario, are involved in livestock and poultry farming. We have fruit and vegetables. That's more, apple, berries, and tomatoes. And majority of those farmings happen in British Columbia, Ontario, and Quebec. And lastly, we are seeing an increased demand in specialty farming, organic farming, greenhouse crops, and some other types of farming, emerging trends, mixed farming. And this is just pushing towards sustainability. People are sort of like going away from the old method of farming practices that causes global warming, greenhouse, and all those other climate challenges, and focusing more on some specialized way of farming, ensure sustainability. Sustainability is a big thing right now in the farming sector. And if you find somebody, or if there's anybody who aligns very well with that industry, it's a very big opportunity for growth right now in the agricultural sector. So what are the steps to enter the agricultural sector? Number one, understand your skill and interest. Like I said, I just mentioned there are different, areas of farming. And so you need to access your skills and interests. You need to identify the area of agriculture that you align with, whether it's farming, whether it's food processing, whether it's distribution, sales, depending on what your skills are. And that would help you to identify what exactly you need to focus on as a new immigrant. And the next thing is education. And I'm going to emphasize this. I'm going to really, really emphasize this. Education is very, very important. While there are some opportunities that you do not need to sort of like, go to school for in agriculture, those opportunities might not, sort of like, get you to where you want. They are just sort of like, low-level job kind of thing. You learn on the job as you go, or more labor-focused. But if you really want to get to the peak of your career, if you really want to, advance, education is the key. And now, so education, it depends on what you really want, right? And it's based on whatever background, whatever your education background is, your own country where you're coming from. And so that would help you to sort of like make that decision. So we have, different agricultural programs and courses offered by universities or colleges. Some are online. And I'm going to say it depends on what you want. So if you are just a new immigrant and you are just sort of like, just want to dive dive deep into the industry, not minding the way you start, then take some agricultural training programs or some diploma courses. Some of them are a year, some of them are 2 years, depending on your financial strength. And so that is very important. That is very essential because the system of farming in the places where we come from very different from what we have here in Canada. Number one, because of the weather. So farming is more seasonal. There are certain crops that you can only grow during the summer period. There are some crops that you can only grow during the cold season. I mean, a lot of sciences have been going into plant breeding and genetics that can, be cold resistant. But then seasonality plays a very big role. And so that differentiates farming from the temperate region, from the tropical region. Number two is the equipment. So the equipment for farming, are very specialized here in Canada. And it takes serious skill acquisition, serious training to be able to hop on this equipment and operate them, which we might not necessarily be exposed to from Africa or from other, third world countries, I would assume. And even if we have some exposure, there are certain rules and guidelines, that differs, from country to country. Anyways, education is still, very, very important and essential in this. And like I also said, the farming systems are different. But if you want to get some more high level education, maybe if you have an undergrad degree back from home country, maybe go for higher degree, become more specialized and things like that. And you can climb up the management ladder that way with education. And so it really depends on what you want, how soon you want it, and that will help you to make this decision. Also, networking is very important, it's very essential. There's no way you can get into the agricultural sector by just standing aloof. You have to network, you have to go to, we call it farming events where the public meets the farmers, or you have to do some sort of networking. Sometimes you have to join some agricultural associations. Each provinces have their different associations, they have their different requirements and things like that. So we need to get to know, and those associations are based on the different professions in agriculture. Say, for example, that of the soil science might be different from animal science, might be different from plant science, might be different from food science. So it really starts from assessing your skills and your interests, and then you can align your networking based on your skills and interests. You can ask for mentorship from local farmers. I can tell you, farmers are always open to talk to the public about what they do. Number one is, I must tell you, there's that bias, between the general public and farmers. There are misconceptions by the general public. And so one of the things that we are focused on in the agricultural sector is correct those misconceptions. And so the farmers themselves are aware of that. And so any opportunity those farmers see to interact with people, to talk to them, they always want to take it. And so that's another way to network and enter the agricultural niche. So this is very important. This is very essential. So then what are the work opportunities in agriculture? Like I said, number one, farm labor. That's the barest minimum. This is no experience kind of thing. We train you and then you get on the job. Sometimes it's seasonal work opportunities, planting, harvesting, livestock care. Those things, just some sort of understanding would get you this kind of job. While that can get you going, that may not be very suitable for you. And so you may not be able to contribute intellectually to everything going on. You may not be able to allude to research. You may not be able to draw, I would say, knowledge from the things you have learned in school while working in this capacity. But at least it can start to get you some sort of experience. If you want to get into there's a farm management. And so this one requires you to have some sort of educational training, sort of like being a farm manager, managing livestock, managing crop, and so forth. So you would need some sort of education to be able to take advantage of this kind of opportunities. There are specialized roles, like I mentioned, in crop management, in marketing, in equipment handling. Some sort of education will be very important in this. And then we are going to the technology side. We have agricultural tech innovation. Yeah, like I mentioned, adapting newer technologies to farming to ensure sustainability, reduce all those climate problem and challenges. We need some sort of education to get to this level. And then we have agribusiness. That's more on the marketing side, sort of like, distributing the finished products or the processed foods to different markets, to different countries, like I mentioned. The agriculture sector in Canada is more export focused as opposed to internal consumption. And you need understanding of economics, you need understanding of different strategies to be able to work in this capacity. And so that is how education ties into these job opportunities. Now, what do we need to access support as immigrants? There are a lot of government grants and funding for immigrants to go to school, some sort of farm credit, some agricultural internship opportunities for skill acquisition and development. For people who want to start a farm or who want to start some sort of agricultural operations in Canada, we have funding for startups, we have loans and things like that. But I must say, before you can get to this level, you have to have, partner. I was listening today, to be able to have a farm of your own, you have to maybe have worked with somebody who owns a farm, because farming here in Canada is sort of a generational heritage, right? So they pass it on from parents to grandparents to grandchildren and all those kind of things. And so breaking the niche of agriculture in Canada might be very difficult, or starting something on your own. So you have to, be involved in some sort of partnership with them first. They trust you and things like that. They even have different secrets to succeeding. Some of those lands they farm on, they are just leased or loaned from the government, and to do their farming, they have access to all those credit and things like that. And so what I'm saying essentially is that to be able to start something of your own, maybe you have to have, work with somebody or a farmer who is experienced. So I'm saying access to land initiatives for new immigrants, to be able to acquire farmland under some leasing program, to be able to start something of their own. So, having said that, for new immigrants, there are challenges, there are things to overcome. And number one is language barriers. Our language is different and things like that. And so we have to understand how to properly communicate. As a student, when I first came to Canada, it was difficult, it was challenging, but over time, you overcome those challenges. And so for some people, it might involve taking English, improving your communication skills. For people who don't have English as their first language, they have to need some interpretations and things like that. And so the first challenge to always overcome is those language barriers, most especially for us who are from the African descent, is communication. The person has to be able to understand what you are trying to communicate. And so the second thing is climate and geography. As you all know, Canada is a prairie zone, or the western zone of Canada, where majority of the farming operation happens. Is very cold. So you have to face those challenges of getting used to the environment. And so there are groups, there are people who have to overcome that. The third one is access to resources. Like I mentioned, farming in Canada is a generational inheritance, and so it's sometimes a close niche, passing it on from generation to generation. But now that there's that demand for agricultural labor and things like that, so some resources are being opened up for people to take access to. So having those information is very important. Sometimes there can be financial difficulties, but then there are government grants, there can be land acquisition problems, but then you can always loan lands or lease lands. And so those informations are very important to know before one launches out. And of course, the cultural differences, our own understanding of respect, our own values, shared values, are different. And so we need to learn how to align all these things to be successful in the agricultural landscape or in general overall. And so some practical steps to succeed. Number one, always be smart, think big, consider starting in a small scale or a niche. It could be cropping, it could be some sort of low level operations. You could just be working, starting for somebody, gain all the skills, gain all the knowledge that you need to launch out. Also, we need to leverage on some innovations. Like I mentioned the other time, we don't necessarily have to go back to the old way of farming. Now we have new innovations like growing crops vertically as opposed to growing on a large expanse of land that's more sustainable, growing crops in container, organic farming. People are now very mindful and now very conscious of the things they eat. So people want to go organic. So if you have skills that in that line, that may be a very good opportunity to take hold of and other sustainable ways of agriculture. And information is very important. We cannot stay aloof. We need to launch out, which is one of the reasons why we are having this training to be able to inform. So we have those informations, and then once we meet with people outside, we can educate them and direct them to the right source. So informations on policies, agriculture, market trends are very important. And one of the way I do this is I visit websites, I read a lot, and so I stay very informed. One of the one I can inform you right off the bat is right now, the president-elect in the United States has slapped 25% tariff on everything coming from Canada, everything export. And that is very significant. And that is actually affecting a lot of things. I was listening to somebody today, and with that statement, he said it's canola reduced by $2, like the amount he's going to sell. I believe bushel or a kg of his canola had reduced by $2. And so having that information would help him to see how to adjust things to still be able to make profit and things like that. So that's very, very important. So staying informed, understanding the new trends and to take advantage of is very, very essential for success in the Canadian agricultural landscape. And I just want to touch on some things that would help us, whether you are trying to start a new career in agriculture, or you're already in agriculture, or even in other. There are some things that require zero talent that we should be working on that sort of like us in a better position ahead of others. And number one is being on time, being punctual. You don't require talent to have that. And so whether you're starting as a student or you just got a new job in the agricultural sector, being on time is very important, and you don't need talent to you have that. Having a strong work ethics, very important. You don't need the talent to build that. Putting effort in what you do is something very important, and we don't need the talent to do that. Passion and drive, going above and beyond, doing more at least than is required of you, like open the way up for you to take advantage of different opportunities, being prepared, being correctable, being coachable, very important thing that we need to have in the workspace here in Canada. And they don't require any talent to have that. And lastly, staying positive and having a positive attitude. And so all these, if we can work on these, everyone can work on these, or as a new immigrant, you can work on these, and with the skills and knowledge you have, that really opens up the opportunity for success. And so as I conclude, agriculture in Canada offers diverse opportunities, especially for immigrants. Like I said, the landscape is wide. Seems to be like it's the older generations that are still farming. Young people are sort of like running away from farming. So that opens up the opportunities for immigrants. But like I said, the whole people need those innovative minds and innovative thinking of the young people, brings us on the same space, and we can be more committed to providing food for our nation and for the nations around the world. With the right skills, with the right resources, the right support, you can be successful in agriculture in Canada. Information is key. You can leverage on information about government programs, networking opportunities and things that are available for success. Also, we need to take the step. So you need to decide as an immigrant that is coming to Canada, you need to understand what skills you have. You need to align skills with the opportunities that are available here. If you have to go to school, don't delay, go to school. Like I said, it can just be as little as a 1-year certificate program or a 2-year diploma course, or going to relearn the things you have learned back from home or back in Africa. Or it can be a combination of both. You can bring those skills, new things, and you just zoom off like that. And so the start acting is now. You can connect with farming communities. Like I said, farmers are always open to discussions and conversations. They even welcome you to see some of their farming practices, and that's how they ensure continuity. They always also want to focus on debunking every sort of like outside there about farming, and so that is always an opportunity to network. And so if you want more information about the Canadian agricultural sector, like I volunteer some of my time with an organization called International Youth in Canadian Agriculture. I have monthly webinars. We had one today. That was the one I was referring to. And in these webinars, we invite, farmers like across Canada, the young to come and talk and sort of like educate the young generation on the opportunities that abound in agriculture. And so I believe we started that webinar in September. So we've had the September edition, we have the October edition, we just had the November edition today. Students, December, and the edition is coming, which is more focused on our young professionals trying to enter into the agricultural space as well. So you can just go to ic.ca. You can see those webinars we have had and some more in-depth information or in-depth look into the Canadian agricultural sector. And I'll be happy to take any questions if there are any. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
You can unmute or type yes, continue. Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks, Bola. You can go ahead. You can unmute. Yes, continue.
Okay, for the insightful, I must tell you that those things came up. Had got thinking about it when I came into Canada, and I was just wondering because I heard of canola right from home, and knew really associated with Canada, oil coming from Canada, because that's the oil we usually opt for at home. But then I'm just wondering too, a lot of questions came ringing, and I was wondering how does regional agricultural practices, just like I think the first slide or the second slide, regional agricultural practices in Canada, how it adapts to environmental changes, because how many months of summer do we have, and such climate change, how can we be able to sustain key sectors like the grain, crop production, livestock, and also specialty crops? As I think that's one is greenhouse farming and the likes. So how does the environment challenges? Because I least expected that we'll be getting so much as far as agriculture is concerned in Canada, where we have challenges of weather changes and the likes. So coming to that question is talking to sustainability and regional adaptation. So I just want to know. Then the other thing which got me thinking is when we talk of a generational thing, agriculture being a general, something that has to do with somebody passing it to the others. And we also got to know that youths are not interested again in farming. Maybe it's not looking interesting to them. And we say maybe the father owns a farm, he wants to pass it to a child. How are we going to sustain agriculture like that? And how do you break in someone that is just coming as an immigrant? You are saying partnering with people. Has that worked really? Is it practical? Is it really working? Because I know that back home, people can just, once you get a large expanse of land, you can decide to go into large crop production. I have an uncle that owns a very big farm. He made millions. Those times as far back as 80s, he had several tractors and a whole lot of things. And he didn't really go to school. really, but because he had privilege of getting land, he inherited some lands. So he dived into agriculture, and there was no barrier as such. And other people were able to break in, and they just started. There were no such barriers. But now, how do we break in? And especially for an immigrant coming, and you say you want to go into large-scale farming, maybe you have some funds and you want to invest and the likes. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around those kind of questions coming in this light. So those are just the two questions I want to find out.
Thank you very much. And those are very great questions. And so the first question is how Canadian agriculture, with the limitation in weather and everything, are still able to be very productive. And so I'm going to say is the first thing is a lot of planning, right? They have understood the seasonality of farming in this place, and they have adapted their production practices around those seasonalities. So that's what I'm going to say. So for example, you see them sort of like growing those crops that have short time to maturity in those summer months. And most of the time they start those farming, tilling practices just immediately after it stops snowing. They start to till the ground and things like that. And then they are getting all the grains into the ground. And by October or November, even around the time we are doing Thanksgiving, you already had their harvesting already. And so it's a lot of planning around their farming operations. That's number one. Then number two, like I mentioned, I was alluding to genetics. So a lot of billions of dollars are invested in creating new variety of crops that are cold weather resistant. So I know that for crops and even for livestock farming, especially when it comes to beef cattle production, they have improved the genetics such that some of those cattle, especially for the meat type, their outer skin coat and survive some cold weather condition. And so it goes back to planning, it goes back to the science. So it goes back to understanding the seasonality of the weather landscape here in Canada, planning, and some investment in genetical modifying genetics or creating variety of crops and that are better weather resistant. And so that would be my answer to your question, your first question. And the second question is regarding generational agriculture here in Canada. Yes, it is true that, like I said, majority of the productions are, the landscape is a little bit tight. In fact, just to shock you, just like you mentioned in Nigeria, somebody can just acquire a large expanse of land and sort of like, start farming, not necessarily taking the permits and everything necessary. But here, everything is a quota system. So they call it the quota system. So there's number one, production is regularized. Number two, the government is in control of everything. There are different agricultural organizations that control all these production activities. For example, in Manitoba here, we have the Manitoba Pork. We have dairy farmers of Manitoba. We have all those agricultural groups and organizations that provide all those quota system. And so if somebody wants to break in, the first level of activity will be to familiarize with all those agricultural organizations. That's number one. Then number two, like I said, there are opportunities to acquire land from the government, even on lease. So all those informations are on the website. There are opportunities to acquire land on lease and things like that. Even equipment, you can lease equipment. But like I said, before one can dive into those landscape, one needs to understand the specialties or the professionalism around the kind of farming you are going into. And to really be able to understand that, that is where that part of partnership comes in. And so to really break into that space, you need to understand, you need to partner with somebody who has been experienced. It starts from striking a friendship. Oh, I'm interested in this. Can we work together? Like I said, farmers are always open to conversations. When they see that you are very serious, some things just starts from casual friendship. And from there, they start to show you the way to do it. And that is why we have organizations, just like I have mentioned, the one I volunteer with. We have understood that gap between the older generation of farmers and the younger generation. And so we are trying to get those information out there. And to allude to the young people not being interested in agriculture, there are some things you can do in agriculture that does not really necessarily make you go to the ground. I guess it's that hard labor, that hard work, that young people are running from. But now agriculture is more technology savvy, basic technology, doing things with technology, which falls in the space where our young people are interested in. And so if we can come from that perspective, from that direction, we might be able to catch the interest of some of them.
Just in the interest of time, we can move on to the next question. I see, the question is in the chat. I'm going to read it out. It's from Mary F. It says, are there successful immigrant farmers presently, and are there opportunities for mentoring anyone who is interested?
Good question. Successful immigrant. I know people from, I've not seen anybody from Africa, to be honest, but I know possibly people from the Spanish descent. I know there are some sort of presence in Canada owning farms. I know a couple of people have tried some sort of backyard operations and things like that. So I might not be able to mention specific, but then some other opportunities to connect with these farmers. For example, farmers market. That brings the farmers themselves in contact with people. So maybe an example, way to start is just attending a farmers market and sort of like see how that happens, interact with the farmers, see what they are open to, and then that can open up the opportunity to start those conversations. I hope that answers that question.
All right, thank you so much. Does anyone else on the call have any additional questions? In terms of having access to the presentation slides, I can get in contact with you after we're done the meeting to potentially email it to you or share it with you that way. All right.
I was going to say, for mentoring opportunities, interested persons can reach out to me. A very good way to start that mentorship mentee conversation would be from the place where I volunteer. And it also depends on what the person is interested in. And then we can take it from there. Thank you.
And are you on LinkedIn? Did they connect with you on
Yes, you can add me on LinkedIn, my name and last name on LinkedIn, and then share opportunities, even opportunities for scholarship to go to school and things like that. And
thank you so much. That was a very insightful presentation. I'm sure a lot of us were positively shocked to learn that Canada is a net exporter of agricultural products. And I particularly loved when you talked about how there's space for an agribusiness, there's space for other professionals in the agricultural industry as well. So if you're an accountant or you're in marketing or logistics or research, you can still work in that industry without starting from scratch. So thank you to everyone on the call. Thank you for joining to come learn more about navigating agriculture in Canada. Thank you to our presenter, Mr. Samuel Ariibi. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us. Again, if anyone has any follow-up questions, direct questions, I see that a phone number for him was posted in the chat. And also you can contact him on his LinkedIn. Thank you so much again to our CEO, Pastor Ige, for giving us this platform to be able to share and collaborate together. Please be on the lookout for information about future workshops that will be coming up in December, January, and into the new year. Thank you also to my host, Tokbe. And there's no additional questions. Sorry, we overshot our time by about 5 minutes, but if there's no additional questions or comments, I'm gonna end the call now. So thank you so much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.